We're starting off with WWE, and prior to this week's Raw, WWE main event was filmed, but what was originally planned for the show was not what was taped. Fightful Select reports that originally, Katana Chance was scheduled to face Blair Davenport for WWE main event, but Chance was replaced by her tag team partner, Kaden Carter. There's no word on why Chance did not compete or if she's suffering an injury, but WWE clearly decided it was in their best interest to not have her wrestle. The other match of the night, which saw Wes Lee face Akira Tozawa, was the original plan, but with the change to the women's match, we'll have to see when Katana Chance is next in the ring. After Crown Jewel, Roman Reigns isn't expected to be in action until next year's Royal Rumble show, but who will be next to step up to the Tribal Chief? With Reigns expected to retain against LA Knight, this is the question many have been asking, and fans may find out as soon as next week's episode of Smackdown. PW Insider reports that AJ Styles will return to WWE TV on the November 10th show after being attacked by the Bloodline during the September 22nd Smackdown. The feud between the OC and the Bloodline has been playing out on TV, with Mia Yim slapping Jimmy Uso for disrespecting the group, so there's plenty of reasons for AJ to set his sights on Reigns when he's back. Styles and Reigns have faced for the title gold before, but that was before Roman's transformation into the Tribal Chief. And is this a match you'd like to see? Let us know in the comments. We are just days away from WWE Crown Jewel, which will see some of the biggest names in WWE today appear on the show, but fans in Riyadh may be seeing much more than just matches. PW Insider Elite's Mike Johnson has learned that WWE is considering a Grayson Waller segment for Crown Jewel, which would likely be his Grayson Waller Effect talk show. The 33-year-old former teacher has made a name for himself in the few months he's been on the main roster, from trading words with The Rock to facing Edge in Madison Square Garden. It was at Money in the Bank that Waller interrupted John Cena after John announced his plans to bring WrestleMania to London, which ended with Waller taking an AA from the GOAT. Should the Australian have a segment at Crown Jewel, he'll want to avoid history repeating itself, and Crown Jewel may be getting the Grayson Waller rub in just a matter of days. John Cena will be one of the many names competing at Crown Jewel, where he hopes to get his first singles win at a premium live event in over 5 years. The 16-time WWE World Champion will face Solo Sikoa at the show, and Cena isn't wasting any time in settling in to Riyadh. While the majority of the WWE superstars are expected to make the trip to Riyadh today, PW Insider reports that Cena is already in Saudi Arabia, though the reason for his early arrival is unclear. Crown Jewel is the last scheduled appearance on Cena's schedule, but with the ongoing strike in Hollywood, this may lead to the addition of more dates for him in the future. The show will be WWE's first Saudi event without the McMahon family in charge, but the report adds that many on the roster expect Vince McMahon to attend Crown Jewel 2023. It's also believed that Ari Emanuel, the CEO of Endeavor, could possibly be at the event to watch over his investment, so WWE's biggest names may be backstage rather than in the ring. Over to AEW as Christian Cage, Luchasaurus, and Nick Wayne interrupted a promo from Adam Copeland, and the TNT champion vowed to break the neck of his former friend. For a moment, it appeared Cage would succeed before Sting and Darby Allin made the save, and Copeland got some revenge by leveling Cage with a spear. Copeland offered to be Sting and Allen's partner at Full Gear after the heels were sent packing, and this was a predictable outcome, but nevertheless sets up a fun match. Predictability isn't always a bad thing, as Copeland's involvement makes sense and sets up a big pay-per-view showdown, and the crowd will be red hot given the history between Copeland and Cage. With that said, some fans on social media haven't been wowed by Copeland's AEW run, with the consensus being that the hype surrounding him has vanished, and he's simply not as interesting as he was. But what do you think of Copeland's AEW run so far, now that it's been a month since he's arrived? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. In the days prior to this week's Dynamite, Tony Khan promised yet another major announcement, with fans guessing what the AEW president had in store. Perhaps it'd be the reveal of a new match type, plans for an AEW streaming service, or even the shocking rehiring of CM Punk, but what Khan had to say felt somewhat underwhelming. After the first hour of Dynamite, Khan appeared and spoke about AEW All In 2, which will take place on August 25th next year. Khan's big reveal was that tickets for the show will be going on sale December 1st, so with the holidays coming up, Khan wanted to make sure fans knew an all-in ticket was a great gift. It seems that Khan's big announcements don't have the weight they used to, and perhaps he'll break some bigger news next time he teases something major. On Twitter, WWE and Impact Hall of Famer Bully Ray simply asked, "Was that the huge announcement?" as he is just one of many who were expecting something bigger from the AEW boss. With that said, All In 2 will be a big event if this year's show is any indicator, and we imagine tickets will be going quick next month after this alleged major announcement. More from Dynamite as John Cena made his AEW debut on this week's show, or at least that's sort of true. During a women's division match, Excalibur and Taz promoted Wipeout, the show hosted by Cena and Nicole Byer, and it was quite the show to have Big Match John be mentioned on Dynamite. Dynamite kicked off with international champion Orange Cassidy successfully defending his title against Claudio Castagnoli in a competitive encounter. Referee Bryce Remsburg booted Hook and Wheeler Yuta from ringside in hopes of ensuring the match remained one-on-one, giving fans an excellent match free of shenanigans. Castagnoli was his aggressive, intense, physically dominant self during the match, who was able to overwhelm the champion with his power advantage. Castagnoli using his unreal power to carry Cassidy up the steps and onto the ring apron while in a vertical suplex was extraordinary, and many thought a new champion would be crowned. As we've seen in the past, Cassidy proved his resiliency and countered an attempted pop-up uppercut with a head scissors takeover for the win. This is the latest devastating loss for Castagnoli, who's been taking more L's than W's as of late, and is in severe risk of falling into the pack despite being one of the best wrestlers on AEW's roster. For Cassidy, it proved his toughness that has been his story for the past year, but a post-match beatdown by Jon Moxley would cut OC's celebration short. A backstage challenge all but confirmed the two will run their all-out main event back at Full Gear, and what should be another excellent affair. This week's AEW Dynamite also saw Renee Paquette interview MJF, and Roderick Strong had some strong words for the best friend of his best friend, Adam Cole. With Cole on a video call, Strong said that MJF seemed like the devil who attacked Jay White not too long ago in MJF's mask, and when Cole disconnected the call, the devil briefly appeared on the screen. There's been a ton of speculation about who the person is, and it may be someone fans haven't seen since All In last August in London. Some fans believe that the devil will be revealed to be Jack Perry, who was suspended from AEW after his backstage altercation at the show, but as previously reported, his suspension has ended. AEW has wanted to put more time between the events of All In and Perry's return, seemingly in the hope fans will forget about what happened backstage in Wembley. When the devil first appeared, many noticed a somewhat leaner frame than the likes of MJF, which would point the finger of suspicion at Perry, who was an excellent heel prior to his suspension. Perry returning as the devil is an educated guess, but it's one that makes a lot of sense storyline-wise too. But it remains to be seen who will be the person unmasked on AEW TV. For weeks, speculation has run rampant as to whether CM Punk could return to WWE, with some comments on WWE programming being seen as teases of his comeback. Although some fans believe it'll happen, perhaps at Survivor Series, Eric Bischoff isn't convinced, and is willing to put a part of his body on the line in a bet. During his 83 Weeks podcast, Bischoff made a bet with Conrad Thompson that Punk won't return to WWE, and the loser of this bet will be losing their hair. Bischoff made it clear that he's only taking the bet if Thompson doesn't have any insider info about Punk, which Conrad said he didn't, and Bischoff made it clear that he doesn't either. For Conrad Thompson to save his hair, CM Punk needs to return to WWE by October 31st, 2024, and while Bischoff has had his head shaved multiple times in wrestling storylines years ago, this is a very real wager. With an excited, "F it, let's do it," Bischoff made the bet, and this time next year, it could be Eric Bischoff, as well as WWE's landscape, that looks very different if CM Punk's return does happen. Matt Riddle was one of the bigger names released from WWE back in September, but with the many controversies to his name, there are some who weren't too surprised to see him let go. Now Riddle's first post-WWE booking has been announced, as Bobby Fulton revealed on Twitter that the original Bro will be at Big Time Wrestling's The Reunion 3 show on March 9th. Riddle will be facing fellow marijuana advocate Rob Van Dam, who many have compared Riddle to over the years, in what will be the first match ever between the two. Since joining AEW in 2021, Paul Wight has competed in a handful of matches, and now the former WWE superstar will be returning to the ring during an upcoming episode of Dynamite. Wight will align with Chris Jericho, Kenny Omega, and Kota Ibushi in a street fight against the Don Callis family on the November 15th Dynamite, in a star-studded match fitting of the ex-Big Show. While many fans are excited to see Wight return to action, there are some who are concerned about his health, given that he hasn't wrestled since March of last year. That match saw Wight defeat Austin Green on the March 30th, 2022 edition of AEW Dark Elevation, and since then, the Giant has undergone a knee replacement procedure, which has kept him out of action. Wight was at one time planned to compete at All In a meeting of the Giants with Satnam Singh, but the plans did not go through, and the match didn't make it onto the card. Instead, Wight and Singh were on opposing sides of a brawl during the All In kickoff show, but fans will soon see the former WWE champion make his in-ring return later this month. At AEW Revolution 2024, Sting will retire from professional wrestling after a legendary career that has seen him work with all-time legends of the industry. Given that Sting's AEW wrestling debut was at Revolution 2021, it's fitting his career will end at the show 3 years later, but Sting initially didn't want to wait this long to hang up his boots. Speaking with Sports Illustrated, Sting explained that he wanted to hang up his boots by the end of this year, before the arrival of an old friend changed his mind. He said, "I wanted to finish earlier, maybe in December, but now that Rick is here with me, I want to go longer, all the way to Revolution. All I can say for now is I want people to walk away and say, wow, what an ending. I'll be 3 weeks away from turning 65 at that point. I want to leave people with a memory that'll mean something." Sting and Flair had a well-storied history, and Sting has said that Flair helped put him on the map, and the two would face off in the final match ever for WCW on the March 26, 2001 Monday Nitro. Reminiscing about his WCW days, Sting admitted that AEW reminds him of his time with the promotion, adding, "Tony Khan called me and asked me to go out in style. I like that idea, I couldn't say no. The AEW brand reminds me so much of the WCW brand. Tony allowed me to come back and have some fun, and I'm so grateful for that. It's been a lot of fun." We're sure that Sting hopes AEW doesn't suffer a similar fate as WCW, and whatever the future holds, expect to see plenty more of the icon before his final match at Revolution next year. Now, Britt Baker hasn't competed for AEW since September, when she failed to capture the TBS Championship from Chris Statlander on Collision, but the DMD was recently backstage. Sean Ross Sapp reports that Baker was backstage at last week's AEW Dynamite, but it's unknown if she was there with a purpose in mind, or if she was just simply around to watch the show. Baker is a former Women's World Champion who is a valuable member of the roster, even without a title, but we'll have to see when fans can expect Baker back in the ring. For much of Dynamite, the story of the night was MJF trying to recruit Kenny Omega for the main event, but Chris Jericho slammed the door in the champ's face when he tried. Then, Wardlow grabbed MJF and vowed to take everything from his former boss when he least expected it, but it wasn't just the AEW World Champion who was having a tough time. Backstage, Matt Jackson took exception to Kenny Omega partnering with Chris Jericho as of late, and lashed out at his fellow Elite member. In the end, a downtrodden MJF went with the only people to offer up their services, the Acclaimed and Daddy Ass, setting up the main event against Bullet Club Gold. An action-packed bout culminated with a hot tag to MJF, but it was Jay White who got the win with an emphatic Blade Runner. The Acclaimed and Daddy Ass fended off Juice Robinson and the Guns, and White teased hitting MJF with the AEW World title, but Max Caster would take the blow for his friend. The heels escaped up the ramp to close out the show, and White getting a decisive pin was a nice change of pace, as was MJF losing, given that it happens so rarely. Whether White feels like he has a chance at winning, many don't believe he does, especially with the December 30th World's End event happening in MJF's home of Long Island. With that said, this week's Dynamite made a title change at Full Gear seem possible, and the stuff with Caster proving himself to MJF was another gem, as was the four-way scissor to end the show. Like we saw with Adam Cole, MJF has become more willing to let others into his life, which would have seemed impossible 4 months ago, and this is great storytelling that hopefully has a payoff worthy of the months invested in it. The ROH World Six-Man Tag Team titles changed hands on Dynamite, as Brian Cage and Gates of Agony took the gold away from Hangman Adam Page and the Young Bucks. Cage and his allies made short work of the outmatched faces, with an infuriated Matt Jackson tearing the ringside area apart after the match. And would we be seeing the start of a Young Bucks heel turn? Time will tell. Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega once again proved to be a formidable duo, as they defeated Cool Hand Ange and Daddy Magic. That's despite the heels using a baseball bat on Jericho's face, but in the end, it was the inaugural AEW World Champion who hit the Judas effect to score the win. Hikaru Shida once again retained her AEW Women's World title on Dynamite, this time against Willow Nightingale in a hard-fought match that had plenty of drama afterwards. Shida and Nightingale are great workers and delivered a fun match, but the outcome was never in question. And for Willow to move up as AEW clearly wants, they need to start having her win. Perhaps AEW can turn her situation into a storyline, but if these losses continue like this, fans will lose confidence in her ever winning the big one. The commentators reminded fans that Nightingale is the 2023 Owen Hart Women's Tournament winner, something that is easy to forget given the manner in which she has been booked since. Post-match, Toni Storm interrupted the celebration of Shida, who attacked her all the way to the back, while Julia Hart appeared seconds later and offered to shake Nightingale's hand. Sky Blue stood between the two and sprayed blue mist in the face of Hart, sending her scurrying in a dramatic finish to this segment that plays on the slow build we've seen from all these stars. AEW clearly has plans for all the women we saw, with Toni Storm once again delivering, and we'll have to see if the Timeless One becomes champion at Full Gear. So that was this week's Dynamite, and what did you make of this week's show? Let us know down in the comments. After a tag team match on Raw in May, it was revealed that Braun Strowman would be taking a long break from the ring due to needing neck surgery. Now it's looking like Strowman's return could be happening very soon, as on Twitter, Braun shared a tweet from the Andrews Sports Center where several WWE stars have been treated and thanked them for the good news. Strowman didn't share what said good news was, but many fans in the comments predicted an imminent in-ring return, with one suggesting a surprise return at the Royal Rumble. Strowman is one of WWE's big names, but his momentum has been derailed due to this injury, and hopefully it won't be much longer before we see the monster among men back in the ring. In September, WWE struck a deal with NBC Universal to take Smackdown away from Fox and back to the USA Network, and this move might have big consequences for AEW. With NBCU paying top dollar, no, not the wrestler, for SmackDown, it may be unwilling or unable to keep Raw or NXT around, meaning these shows may soon need a new home. Earlier this year, USA exec James Andrew Miller suggested that if this were to happen, Warner Bros. Discovery may want to bring Raw or NXT into the fold, despite already airing AEW programming. Signing Raw and NXT may leave WBD reconsidering hosting AEW shows, or at least shows like Rampage and Collision, so we'll have to see what the future holds and where these shows line up. During this week's Raw, the Creed brothers made their main roster debut, and with Ivy Nile in their corner, the Creeds defeated Alpha Academy's Chad Gable and Otis. After that impressive match, the Creeds won their Tables, Ladders, and Scares match on NXT, and while the brothers are working well, WWE has a close eye on one Creed in particular. On Wrestling Observer Radio, it was noted that WWE is very high on Julius Creed, and they've been high on him ever since he made his debut. Even before Julius's first match, which was a tag match on the August 24th, 2021 NXT, people were high on him, with the belief among some that he's going to be a main roster main eventer. What that means for Julius's brother Brutus, time will tell, but if things go right for Julius, it may be a matter of time before we see this Creed headlining WWE Premium Live events. But what do you think of Julius Creed after he and Brutus debuted on Raw this week? Is Julius a WWE main eventer in the making? Sound off in the comments down below. And we're ending with last week's AEW Collision, which saw the company continue the build to Full Gear, but Fightful Select has learned last Saturday also saw AEW try out a new female referee. Gina Monty tried out for the company prior to the show, and we'll have to see if her future resides in the All Elite promotion.